Now we hear from three of Elizabeth's oldest friends. Tom.
Thank you, Jeff. And thanks a lot, Jamie, because you totally destroyed me, of course. And I've seen every performance she's ever given since she was 6 years old. And okay. Elizabeth taught the same way she lived, with her eyes and ears wide open, attuned to every student, every collaborator, every story. She would probably say that I'm more from the mouth wide open school. So at the first Shakespeare camp we co-directed exactly 20 years ago this month, we found each other to be an acquired taste. And that forced Stan into the role of dad, which I would apologize for, but I like to think it gave him practice, for being the spectacular father you see before you today. I believe she might have suggested once or twice that I talk just a little less. I might have accused her of being too sensitive. I understand now that sensitivity was actually her superpower. It's the reason that all of her work was so raw and so immediate. If you ever saw her on stage, you know what I'm talking about. It seems like we always cast her as Hermia when we went into schools because, fierce, adorable, put her in your pocket, but then she turns out to be a little trilogy of terror doll, just jumping on your head. But the brilliant thing was that she was like Helena in a Hermia's body. Always questioning, too smart to be certain of anything, so that the audience was living with her on the edge of every moment, right there with her in every character she played. She founded ETC so that we could teach more and change kids' lives with theater, but for years, she kept the company thriving by playing the role of administrator, making those opportunities possible for the rest of us by keeping us grounded in reality. But she listened to us and understood us because she was one of us. Basically, she was a visionary artist that got cast as a managing director because that was the role we most needed her to play. And of course, she never stopped teaching. She originated ETC's legendary McKinley musical residency. Anyone? And thank you. It's changed, thousands of kids into techies and actors through the years. And she taught everyone from 3-year-olds with Sam all the way up to a 103-year-old lady named Frida with me. And when Elizabeth joined me to teach seniors at Creative Age, alchemy happened. She transformed the program from this slow burn readers theater to this super immediate sacred space for truth-telling, and that ended up changing both of our lives as well as the students. The secret ingredient she introduced was the teacher shutting up and listening. We read like a 5-minute sliver of Aeschylus or Almost Maine, and then Elizabeth would ask the most honest question, like, have you ever been betrayed? And the dam would break, and these students would release these incredibly personal oral histories of their lives and the whole world. I was awestruck, and Elizabeth was humbled too, definitely, by what they shared, which she then transmuted into new original scripts, and they performed them. And she was just getting started. She added GW playwriting students to the mix, and that sparked these astonishing group-devised works, and I thought that program was her masterpiece. But then just a couple years ago, she created Devising Hope, and she applied all her discoveries and superpowers to build a bridge between a group of creative adults who were experiencing homelessness and a group of teenage writers and actors who were experiencing being teenagers. And she got them listening to each other, and then together they built not only these unforgettable works of theater, but really a new community that you felt a part of when you went to see them perform. So she turned people into artists, and she sometimes turned artists into people. And everyone she worked with learned to hold our work to that high a bar and to ask ourselves, is my work as a teacher or an artist building a community? Is it giving someone a voice? Is it changing someone's life? HB was so fortunate that our students got to work with her. Her impact there will be rippling out for years to come. Our season closer next year will be a student-directed devised work about transitions, and an idea entirely inspired by Devising Hope. And nothing's better than the fact that Jamie was part of Devising Hope this year. Because getting to teach your own kids is probably the best gift that Elizabeth and Stan gave me, and so many of us on the ETC staff. So I'm so glad she got to experience that. And many of us also got the gift of teaching Elizabeth and Stan's kids. Eli kicked ass as Philip the Bastard last fall. Woo! I like to think of Eli as the subtle sheep of the Kitsos Kang theater dynasty. But just like his mom, when he's on stage, you can't take your eyes off him. And then there's Jamie. For anyone who feels regret at not getting to see Elizabeth enough on stage, just go see Jamie perform. Jamie carries Elizabeth's same fierce, resilient spark, the same off-kilter comedy, and the same unmistakable empathy. And she and Eli radiate the love they were raised with, on stage and off, and we see them carry it forward to others every day. So in her students, in her colleagues, and especially in her kids, Elizabeth's eyes, ears, mind, and heart are still wide open. Thanks.
If you asked Elizabeth to list her favorite books, The Road Less Traveled would be at the top of the list. She read it first when she was in her early 20s, and by the time I met her a few years later, she was already on her third reading of it. The Road Less Traveled was a blueprint for Elizabeth, a primer on how to love, grow, forgive, listen, be a true partner, raise children who feel valued. In short, how to be fully alive. She returned to the book again and again, underlining here, bracketing there, scribbling notes in the margins, and though she could not have possibly foreseen it, the ideas that resonated with her so strongly in her search for healing and personal growth would today offer all of us solace. I felt privileged to spend time with Elizabeth's own copy of the book this week as we determined what to read today. It was a bittersweet visit with my old friend. And as always, she was wise enough to guide me. What follows is a section of the book she herself underlined during one of her early readings of the book, and now a reading literally from the Book of Elizabeth. Throughout the whole of life, one must continue to learn to live, said Seneca 2 millennia ago. And what will amaze you even more, throughout life, one must learn to die. It is also clear that the farther one travels on the journey of life, the more births one will experience, and thus, the more deaths. The more joy, the more pain. If you move out to another human being, there is always the risk that that person will move away from you, leaving you more painfully alone than you were before. Love anything that lives, a person, a pet, a plant, and it will die. Trust anybody and you may be hurt. Depend on anyone and that one may let you down. The price of love is pain. If someone is determined not to risk pain, then such a person must do without many things: having children, getting married, the ecstasy of sex, the hope of ambition, friendship. All that makes life alive, meaningful, and significant. Move out or grow in any dimension, and pain as well as joy will be a reward. A full life will be full of pain. But the only alternative is not to be fully alive, or not to live at all. At 23, Elizabeth knew that she needed to be brave to claim the life that she wanted. And at 53, she urges us to be the same. Brave.
At Elizabeth and Stan's infamous thunderstorm wedding, how many brides can boast of Pepco's attendance? The Buddhist officiant bound Elizabeth and Stan together in circles of people, an ever-widening movement from the intimate to the familial, to the friends, to the community, and out into the universe. A beautiful and powerful idea about circles that I will now borrow in reverse. In this first circle, I want to talk about Elizabeth the actor. That was how I first knew her when we were at UVA together, and then in DC when she was the lead in my first 4 plays. She was my muse. What worked about Lizzie on stage always was her comic timing, an unteachable skill, you're either born with it or you aren't, coupled with her vulnerability. Like all the best comics, there was pain under the funny. I feel so much loss for those of you who never got to see her slay it on the stage. She had incandescence and longing and daring, lightning in a bottle. Someone asked me recently if Elizabeth missed acting because she taught so much. Of course she did, but teaching was her calling. She and I talk about it all the time in our little shared office, how lucky we both felt to be in the classroom, how the classroom was a sacred space, another circle. Elizabeth was not just a good teacher or a great one. She was life-changing, and not just for one person or for 2 or for 3, but for hundreds. And her genius for directing, yet another circle, was driven by her energy and focus and commitment and humor. She used her own hard-earned personal growth as fodder for her evolution and always met people where they were. When you talked to her, you were the only person in the room. Our students told Elizabeth everything. Seriously. She always knew who was dating whom, who's having a spat. She always knew the subtext. But she didn't invite these confidences. People just came to her with them. So as we circle down in this extended metaphor, we move to Elizabeth the friend. I was the first of our group of friends to have children, and here is a testament to Lizzie's devotion. She was the first person, except for nurses, to hold my twins at the hospital. She beat my mother. Elizabeth had a lifetime of serious dedication to friends, the family she made and deserved. Another circle. Of course, we were all stand-ins for the real family, the next circle, the most intimate and powerful, the family she and Stan made together. Elizabeth had lost. She and Stan lost 2 babies, let's not forget. But Elizabeth was blessed with a partner who unfailingly put her happiness first, always first. Stan, please know how much we all love you and how you have shown us all the ideal in your love and devotion. And also, don't cry because you're next up after Jamie Jen. Jamie's arrival was a thing of beauty. Eli's arrival was a treasure. Lizzie's children meant quite literally everything to her, everything. We talked about it all the time, the perfect circle. In this time of transition and crisis, I have little to offer Eli and JJ in the way of comfort or advice, except for this one thing. Your mother, whether you realize it or not, has given you the strength and the tools and the heart and the power to heal from the loss of her. It doesn't feel like it now, I know. But she has done that for you. I promise that you will feel her contributions over and over again, and her values, which are braided into your hearts and consciences, they will guide you. I don't know much in this world, but I do know that. Her life challenges made her profoundly transparent to all of us and very connected to the pain of other people in an incredible way. I still cannot get over the respect I have for her hard work on herself. This was a life skill that turned her into a woman who took the emotional steering wheel. She took charge of her own life, and in doing so made everyone else around her clearer, stronger, and more actualized. Elizabeth and I had a little ritual, and I know I'm not the only one she said this to. Whenever we said goodbye, I always said, "I love you," and she always said, "I love you more." And she did. She loved me more. She loved everyone more. It is surreal that I'm standing here before you wonderful admirers of my friend of over 30 years, and I'm responsible for some sort of summation of her life, a life that was deeply felt, purpose-filled, and intense. She lived with the volume and the energy turned all the way up. She had no regrets there. Elizabeth was never quiet, unless she was listening. Elizabeth was always busy, unless someone needed help. Elizabeth was always talking, unless someone needed silence. She was exuberant, committed, connected, vibrant, brave in her acting, brave in her truth, brave in her teaching, brave in her causes, brave living out loud. But most importantly and profoundly, she was the embodiment of selfless love. She loved everyone more.